I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
You're arguably one of the best baseball players of all time. I'm trying to think of all these components of what transformed you from a talented, obsessed kid to one of the best players of all time. And it's never a matter of just talent. It's never a matter of just skill. It's never a matter of just practice. It's kind of a combination of all these things. There's also an element of luck. Joe Torre, the first baseman for the Cardinals, hurt his hand.
Yes.
You were the obvious choice to move up, and boom, now you're in the major leagues.
And 2.5 years removed from high school.
Did you have a plan B?
I had no plan B. To this day, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't make it. I had a high school education, and I was a good student, but I didn't want to go back to college. Since I was 5 years old, when my father put the first bat in my hands, started throwing tennis balls to me and telling us stories about Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. He taught us the history and the lore of the game, and I just fell in love with it. I bought in.
So I've got Keith Hernandez here. Keith, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. I'm glad to be here.
I'm going to give you a big intro, but I'm going to keep it as tight as possible because I know you're strapped for time. You're arguably, and I think you'll probably be the first to argue this, you're arguably one of the best baseball players of all time, but you're multi-talented. We're here because you just came out with a book. I'm Keith Hernandez, a memoir. It's partially a memoir. It goes up to 1980, kind of the critical years of your career, describing how you rose from basically zero to being the MVP of the league in 1979 and the batting champion in 1979, and then you talk a little bit about your time with the Mets and so on. You've also, a lot of people probably know you because you were on a couple episodes of Seinfeld, including the finale, right? You were on the series finale, the most watched show in history. And now you're a broadcaster for the Mets. You've been a broadcaster for almost 20 years, right?
Yes. I started, I think, around 2000. I forget exactly when it is, but it's been around well over 15 years.
Yeah, and so there's a bunch of things I want to talk about, but I really enjoyed the book. I'm Keith Hernandez, a memoir. I haven't read a lot of sports memoirs, but this is really good. I like the kind of style you tell it in, where you're going back and forth in time, and you have the flashbacks to learning as a kid with your dad, and and we'll talk about that in a second. I also want to mention, I really appreciate the book you wrote, Pure Baseball, Pitch by Pitch. I know you wrote it in 1994.
Right.
But it really is just, it's reminiscent of the classic book that everyone knows, The Science of Hitting by Ted Williams, which is like the Bible of hitting a baseball. Right. And I just like how you, instead of just talking generally about everything baseball, you analyze pitch by pitch 2 games, the ups and the downs, like every decision made. And it's just a genius, from a writer's perspective, it's a genius approach of analyzing sports. It reminds me, I don't know if you play poker, but there's a poker book by a great poker player, Gus Hansen, Hand by Hand, where he analyzes every hand he plays in poker. Cool. So it reminds me of that type of thing.
Great.
But so with that intro, I have a bunch of questions.
Yes, fire away.
I am personally really interested for any field how one rises from beginner to being the best. And it's never a matter of just talent. It's never a matter of just skill. It's never a matter of just practice. It's never a matter of just the mentors you have around you. It's never a matter of just psychology. It's kind of a combination of all these things. And in your memoir, you really see that. I wanna first focus on the role of psychology for you. Like, there's one point you're playing in the minor leagues, which is kind of, for people who don't know, it's kind of like almost the way major league teams, they draft people and they throw them in the minor leagues and see who's good. If you're good, they move you up into the main team. If you're not good, they throw you out. There's your first season, you bat .256, and the manager or one of the managers for the Cardinals, instead of bumping you down to nothing, moves you up. And I thought that was a fascinating decision. That wouldn't happen in today. You even point out that wouldn't happen in today's statistics-driven world.
That was actually my second year in 1973. I was 19 years old. I had hit .256 the year before, my first year in organized ball, in A-ball in Florida State League in St. Pete. This was Little Rock in the Texas League, and I got off to, when you're that young and you come out of high school like I did, and you're only playing 3 games a week at the most. Mainly you play on weekends and in middle of the week. So the big jump is learning to play every day. And you were always the best. I was the best in my area, and I hit 500, and I pitched in championship games. And you're not going to hit 500 in the minor leagues. You're not going to hit 400.
You say when you were in high school, you did
I was
everything.
killing it, and it's not like everybody gets drafted. It's the top athlete. I mean, they got the talent, and then you're competing against the whole melting pot, the whole pool of the country and our country and other countries. I got off to a terrible start. I was a hothead. I hadn't learned to play every day. Joe Ducky Medwick was our minor league batting coach. And Hall of Famer, Gas House Gang, the last guy to be win the Triple Crown in the National League in 1937.
Which, to be clear, is batting average,
RBIs, home runs. It's pretty impressive when you do that. When you lead the league in all those 3 categories, that's pretty.
Although if you lead them in home runs, chances are you're going to lead in RBIs.
Yeah, but maybe not batting average.
Right.
So it's pretty special, and it hasn't been done since 1937 in the National League. So Joe would always. They knew I was talented, so they kind of had an extra eye on me and would try to get me to calm down. I didn't break water coolers, but I certainly threw helmets, kicked up dirt, and had temper tantrums.
But how do they know? Here, this is what I really want to know. Like you said, in high school, you could be by far the best, but then when you're thrown into everybody's the best in high school, and then they get drafted for professional baseball, they get thrown into the minor leagues. Now they're with the best high school player of every city or town.
Or best collegian.
Yeah, and so, and you went straight out of high school, and why did they think you were more talented than the other 1,000 people spread out across all the minor leagues?
Oh, I think I was pretty good. That's why, the talent was there, the swing was there, and there were major league eyes on me, ex-major leaguers. Bob Kennedy is the man you referred to that set me up instead of down. And he was our farm director. He ran the whole farm system, so he was the overseer. And he was he played for the Cleveland Indians, center fielder in the 50s. And he was their baseball eyes watching you. They've seen the talent come and go, from every perspective. Great players, very talented players with bad attitudes. The guy with less ability that works hard and makes it. And they've seen it all, and they make their judgments. Not basic solely on athletic ability, but on character. At least the Cardinals were that way. If they saw someone with bad character, Cardinals would not. There was always, in the minor leagues, there was always a thief on a team that they have a valuable box where everybody puts their wallet. When you got to play, you're not going to play with your wallet and your ring and your jewelry, and they lock it up. When it stays open until about a half hour before the game, there would always be someone that would, it was very rare that would go in and steal money because they didn't. I was paid $500 a month in A-ball. It was $199 every 2 weeks. And in AA, I made $750 a month. And you only get paid during the season. And then in AAA, I made $1,100 a month, and I thought I was living right. And if someone was a thief, they would find out who it was. And then no matter who that person was, this is the Cardinals, if you were a number one draft pick, they released you. They didn't want you around.
Okay, but to be fair, it wasn't, when you were in the minors for the Cardinals, it wasn't like you exemplified great character either. Like you would get upset when you didn't play as well. You would kick dirt accidentally into someone's face, and they would see.
I did do that, yes, and that was an A-ball. But they saw that I had the desire to succeed.
Well, how'd they see that?
I worked hard. I came out to the park and I did my work and took my ground balls and did everything I was supposed to do. For people that are lazy, that don't want to do the running and all that, they don't. You'd be surprised.
Like, is it one of those things where you would get to the park early and it wasn't quite sure?
I wouldn't get to the park that early. I would get there, earlier, but I wasn't one of those guys that would be the first to the ballpark. But they saw the drive and the will and the desire to succeed, and they're looking around to see who's got that little extra. I mean, in Agassi's book, which was so wonderful, he said that he has his brother. His dad taught both of them how to play tennis. Dad said in the book that he'd hit 1,000 balls to both of them. The one brother would go. That was it. Agassi would stay and won 1,000 more. That's what I'm talking about.
And so that must have been reminded you, like your dad was a minor league player. I feel you got kind of a head start on the game compared to a lot of people. Your dad was a great minor league player. He taught you, and starting from age 5, you were obsessed with the game. I feel like you've been obsessed with the game from age 5 to 60 years later. Now you're sitting in front of me. Like, baseball's been everything for you. Like, you went straight out of high school and into professional baseball. Your dad trained you and your brother. Your brother was a minor league player. Obviously, this was very important at cultivating whatever talent you had. I don't know, could someone get that kind of start without that level of training from such an early age?
Well, it certainly helps. A good friend of mine who played for the Cubs and the Royals, Peter Marshall from Hollywood Squares, the host, is his son. And Peter Marshall is a stage name, and it was his real name, and his son's name was Pete Lecoq. So you wonder why he changed. Miss Peter Marshall changed his name. Welcome to Hollywood Squares. Here's your host. That's not going to fly. But Pete went around with that name. He never played baseball till he was a sophomore in high school, and he played 12 years in the big leagues and had a decent career. So I don't have an answer for that.
But he had a decent career. You had a Hall of Fame level career.
Well, it certainly helped to have instruction from my father.
But it's really interesting. Like, you break down, and I know we're bouncing all over the place, but it's all related. I'll connect the dots. You had a conversation with Pete Rose, which you described towards the end of the book, where he broke it down mathematically, the difference between an average player and a great player. And I found it to be fascinating when you break down the math, and I think that kind of analysis can be applied in every area of life. But he basically told you, if you just hit an extra hit, I think out of every 78 at-bats, 100 at-bats, you're going to go from an average player to having basically a Hall of Fame level track record.
And also the point was also the 10-0 game, win or lose, your last at bat, you're in Atlanta or St. Louis or Cincinnati, it's steaming hot, it's August, you're around 110 games into the season, 120 games, and it's a last at bat, and you never give that at bat away. If you got 3 hits, you want 4. If you got 4 hits, you want 5.
What do you mean give it away? Is that an option?
You can go up there, and that's, it's a long season, and it's 10-0 one way or the other, and you can go up there and not be on point on that at bat. So the whole lesson from Pete was, and we'll just give the math to the people right here. You get up around 600 times a year, 5, 6. So just break it down.
So like 4 at-bats
so
a game.
30 times 6 is 180 hits. And that's 300, and you're great. 250 hitter, which is very average, not very good. 6 times 25 is 150. So there's only 30 hits in the season that separates a 250 hitter. That's what you found so fascinating. And I did at the time when he told me, because I was a young player coming up. I was in my early 20s, and that registered to me, and I never realized 30 hits is a difference between a very, very average mediocre hitter to a 300 hitter in the course of a season. And his point was, how many at-bats do you give away in the course of a season? And that's why you can never give away an at-bat.
So now it's very interesting. Now that you described what it means to give away an at-bat, it makes his other phrase, be greedy for those at-bats, much more relevant. And it reminds me, so you wrote this book. Let's see how many pages this book is, like a little over 300. You could do the same math here. If you write 300 words a day, you have this book in a year. If you write 100 words a day, it's three years.
Right.
And that's often the difference between a prolific writer and somebody who has to find another way to make a living. So,
you see, your mind works different than mine. That's very interesting. You're absolutely right.
But you could apply it to every single, for instance, I have some, billionaires on the podcast, and if they come up with, if they network with one person a day as opposed to watching a TV show, that's an extra 365 connections they make during a year. And that's often the difference between $1 billion and $1 million.
So it's always the person that has the drive.
Yeah, and also, again, the math is sort of easy, right? When you look at it, it's like that 1 extra hit per 100, or writing 200 extra words a day, or making 1 more phone call a day as opposed to watching Game of Thrones.
Gotcha. And also, too, I think the point is, once you start sloughing, you give away 1 at bat or 1 phone call, because when you found success, and then it's easier to give it away another one down the road. So if you don't give it away, you've got that standard that you stick that. It's a work ethic,
right? And like people listening might think that's really sort of obvious. Like, of course, I'll give that little bit extra. But you even recount the conversation you have with another player who basically said to you, Keith, watch out. If you do .340 batting average, they're going to expect .350 next year. Like, just stick to like .29,
right?
And no one will expect too much from you.
Well, there's the opposite end right there. Jose Cardinals was the player, a very, very good player for the Cubs, for the Yankees, Cleveland. He was a heck of a player, and he was a 290, 280 hitter. And on my MVP year, my batting title year, I believe it was. I'm not sure. I got a lot of the years jumbled up, and at baseballreference.com was so good to go back, so we wanted to be accurate. It was a very useful website. But there's Jose Cardinals saying, "Hey, you hit what you doing hitting 330?" Like you said, he goes, "Next year, if you hit 330 and you hit 310, they're going to say you had a bad year." Because you can hit with one arm tied behind your back, you can hit 275. Just hit 275. That's all they'll expect from you. I just looked at him. I love Jose, and it wasn't in my DNA to be that way.
But the trap is, with that attitude, he was still a baseball player that made a living from it and had a good career.
Yep.
But that potentially, because he didn't have that be greedy kind of philosophy of put in your all when, even if you're winning 10-0 on a hot day, that kept him from, hitting that kind of stratosphere that you and several other players have hit, like Pete Rose and so on. So I think it's important to realize you could still have a career at something without that be greedy attitude, without that mathematical attitude, but it won't put you in the icons of whatever you're doing.
Well, those that work the hardest, I've seen a lot of players that had a lot of ability, and they blew it. The door opens up for only so long, and you better stick your foot in because it'll shut right in your face. Get in that door and shut it behind you. I've seen so many players that had great ability. Maybe it just wasn't in their blood to be a baseball player, They didn't have the drive, and I've seen a lot of guys.
I can't believe that, though. Someone's in the major leagues.
Well, I'm talking about minor leagues coming up as well. Once you get to the major leagues, minor leagues is where they weed out everybody.
Like, how many people are in the minor leagues versus the major leagues?
When I went to my first camp in '72, the Cardinals had 8 teams. So 25 times 8, there's 25 players to a team. I'm terrible at math. You're better. You do the math.
200.
Okay, so there were 700 kids in camp. 500 kids got sent home. And they got sent home quick.
So again, like your first year, you batted .256. And as you mentioned, in today's world of sabermetrics, and for those who don't know what that means, watch the movie or read the book, The Moneyball by Michael Lewis. The movie had Brad Pitt and Jonah Hill. Great movie, great book. It's all about how statistics and analyzing people's statistics has kind of taken over the way managers select players and manage their baseball teams. In today's world of sabermetrics, somebody in some office that never met you with a PhD in statistics would just say, "Oh, this guy's a .256. Send him home. He's not one of the 200 out of the 700."
Well, let's just. I make that point in the book too, and I'm kind of coming around to analytics because there's a lot of players I played with, ex-players, and they're in the front offices now, in the developing areas of the front offices, and they say there is a lot of things you can wean out of. You'd be surprised in evaluating a player, but there's more to the game than just. I always say statistics are just very sterile, and they don't really tell the guts of a player, the fortitude of a player, and you need eyes on as well. I mean, it's a useful tool. As far as my 256, I got $30,000 signing bonus, which was pretty good for very good, unheard of for a 42nd round draft pick
at age 18.
At age 18, and so they were going to watch me. Okay, 256. They're going to give me 2, 3, 4 years, but if I continue to hit 250 over a 3 or 4 year period, pretty soon they're going to say that window of opportunity is over. They're going to say, well, he is what he is. I guess we made a mistake on this one.
So there's a little bit of almost investment bias in that, Bob Kennedy wanted to prove you were a good pick. So maybe that's another reason why he said, okay, let's try him out in AA and see if the increased pressure will make him better. Well,
they advanced me up to AA. Modesto was the next step up in the California State League that we had. They had 3 A-ball teams. The Midwest League was the low A-ball. The Florida State League was a very tough middling A-ball league. Jim Rice played for Winter Haven there, and he was the best player in the league. He wound up being in the Hall of Fame. Played for the Red Sox, great career. Then there was Modesto High A, and Bob told me also he didn't move me to Modesto because he wanted to keep me away from my father, which I found very interesting. He wanted to wean me from my dad. He didn't, which I find very interesting, and it shows how keen he was. That he wanted me to grow up on my own and not have the influence of my father. He knew the relationship, and he kept me away from my dad, and he put me up to AA. And I really struggled in AA. And then we get to the point where I have the bad season, the up and down season. I almost have what I feel like an out of body experience in the bathtub, and my average plummets in 10 days, and he calls me up, and it just turned my career around. He sent me to AAA, and it turned my career around. It wasn't for him. If it was analytics, they might have set me down, and I might have been finished. And that was in the book when he talked to me about it years later, what he said.
So I think the important lesson there is you've got to be able to show that grit to the people who are the decision makers, and that kind of overrides the statistics to some extent. If you've got the talent and the drive, which you clearly did, and you wanted to show that, but somehow it wasn't coming through for whatever reason, you had to show this grit, and then he recognized, okay, moving this guy up to another level would maybe make him struggle all that much more to step up his game. Like, what happened? Like, how did you step up your game playing against further competition?
I have no explanation for it. It was so hot. In 1973, it flooded in the Mississippi River. We were in Little Rock. And it flooded a mile on each side of the Mississippi. It was just a sweltering summer in Little Rock. And the Texas League was a brutal travel league, and it's documented in the book. I hated it. I hated the Texas League. When I went up to Tulsa, it's in Oklahoma. It's at the fringe of the Great Plains, and you have the winds blowing off the Great Plains from the west. And it was hot there, but the wind was I can't say refreshing because it was a hot wind, but it wasn't the stagnant heat of Little Rock. And I was playing with a bunch of ex-major leaguers. I was a 19-year-old kid. And I'm playing with the guys that had years in the big league that collected their baseball cards, and they were trying to get back up. There's a whole team was full of them, bunch of characters.
Did you feel, though, okay, here I am. This is the last chance I'm going to get to play with my heroes. I've got to step it up. Like, was your brain? Did you feel like, oh my gosh, this is it. I have to perform better?
I did not feel that way. I joined the team in Wichita. I flew from Little Rock to Wichita. Jack Kroll was the manager. He called me in the office, and we were 10 games because we're 10 games under 500. We're in third place. We're going nowhere. We got 35 games left. You're going to play every day. Just relax and have fun. And I just got off hot. It was a new environment, and I think it just gave me. I needed a change of scenery, and I just got hot quick, and it just turned my career around. I hit 330 that last 35 games. I drove in 28 runs. We win the championship, the division, the last day of the season. We came from behind, and we won the American Association playoffs, and we were champions. I can't put my finger on it, but Bob Kennedy obviously was correct in his assessment.
Yeah. So then kind of, there's also an element of luck the next year. Joe Torre, the first baseman for the Cardinals, hurt his hand.
Yes.
You were the obvious choice to move up, and boom, now you had gone from a middling career in the Double-A to now a year or so later you're in the major leagues.
Yes, and 2.5 years removed from high school.
2.5 years removed from high school, which also shows, again, like, this single-minded focus. Like, instead of having a backup plan, like, oh, I'm going to major in economics in college, like, you just pushed and pushed and pushed. High school, post-high school, minor leagues, like, all you did was baseball. Did you have a plan B?
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players, and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me, do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like, the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get two memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
I created this idea called Generation W. It's all about educating, inspiring, connecting women. And it's about building community at the same time. It's not like women are on some outpost somewhere, right? Just like no ethnic people are on some outpost there. People of color, right? We're all together. So if we learn how to appreciate each other, we elevate one, we elevate us all. And so for the first year, that's where we started. And we had 700 people show up. They had no idea what they were showing up to, but they loved it. And they said, we want more.
I had no plan B. To this day, I don't know what I would have done if I didn't make it.
I mean, clearly you have other talents.
I mean, I couldn't rob banks or anything like that. I had to find something else to do. I had a high school education, and I was a good student, but I didn't want to go back to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do. Since I was 5 years old, when my father put the first bat in my hands, and that he sawed down a Little League bat. So, the bat was, I was 5 years old, so I couldn't have a big old wieldy bat. So he made the bat comfortable in our hands and started throwing tennis balls to me and telling us stories about Ty Cobb and Babe Ruth and Ted Williams. And my dad served in the war in World War II and played with Stan Musial, Cookie Lavagetto, all those names. I mean, he taught us the history and the lore of the game, and I just fell in love with it. I bought in.
Yeah, and so there's one conversation you have with maybe the greatest hitter ever, Ted Williams, and he just starts drilling you right away about all hit, he, in his book, The Science of Hitting, he identifies all the different points and how you should, that the pitcher could throw to and how you should hit for each point. And you described to him as a kid setting up a tire so you could practice hitting against that main.
That was from his book, The Science of Hitting, which is the hitting Bible to this day.
And so he was obviously very happy, but you were doing this as a kid, like over and over again. Like it's the kind of the Andre Agassi story.
Right. And my father bought that book, and that book was a tool for us when it came out, when we were growing up as a kid. And so he was very pleased to hear that. And Ted was a very tough guy too. So.
He backed off though. He was like, he comes into your signing autographs.
Right.
He like boom starts drilling you.
Yes.
You're
and I'm nervous and sheepish. I mean, that was the year I won the batting title. That's why he came over and I hit 344. So he wanted to say hello to me, and 344 is not an easy. That's tough to do. I had a great year, and everything just fell into place for me that year after that bad April I had, and he just wanted to pick my brain, and he said something. He's a very, very manly guy, and he said something that kind of embarrassed me, and he leaned into me and said, "I'm sorry. The people who were around us listening, and he goes, I apologize. I didn't mean to embarrass you." Blah, blah, blah. Then he went on. He changed the whole tone of the conversation, but still it was I'm talking to Ted Williams, the greatest hitter of all time, and he just says, "What's the easiest pitch to hit?" Out of the blue, I go, "Oh, God." I go, "The pitch up and away?" He goes, "Right. Why?" I'm going, "God, leave me alone." I go, "I don't, it's just easy for me." And he goes, "I'll tell you why." And he gets in his batting stance with the imaginary bat. And he goes, "Because you take your bat here, you take back, and look where your hands go to the pitch up and away. It's the shortest distance between A and B to a ball coming into you." And I said, "That makes perfect sense. I never thought of it geometrically like that."
But it's interesting how he thought about it geometrically, but you think about it with the eyes of a child, because as a child, that was the hit you were practicing over and over again.
Right.
So it didn't necessarily matter the geometric. You had physical memory from just practicing that particular hit because of him over and over as a kid.
I was never a guy. I tried to play golf when I retired. I have a chronic back. I can't play. I'm not a guy that is, okay, your take back here, point A, here's your second step, here you go to here, and you come down. It's a mechanical way to teach. I'm rhythmic. I'm a feel guy. And that's the way I was taught by my father. I was a very rhythmic hitter, and to a point where I probably talked myself into a lot of slumps, because if I felt that the rhythm was just a fraction off, I would feel it. And
what do you mean by the rhythm?
Pitchers, like my dad used to always say, the hitting is like a train from stop. A train that's stopped. He goes, the train just doesn't go. I should have put it in the book. I just remembered this. The train doesn't go from stop position, and here are the things, and just boom. It's got to go boom, 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 and then it goes forward, right? You got to get momentum going backward to move all that weight, then to go forward. Mm-hmm. And that's hitting. Pitchers in his wind-up, you go back on your back foot, and then you, as the ball releases, you see it out of his hand, you move forward, and it's like a little pendulum. And that's I was a rhythmic hitter.
This is interesting because, and this is a naive question, but the ball's coming at 90 miles an hour or whatever the speed is, and you have to decide, there's several kinds of pitches. So there could be fastball, it could be slider, it could break one way, it could break the other way.
Right.
You have to kind of decide I don't know how, it's 60 feet away.
60 feet, 6 inches.
Yeah, so 90 miles an hour, it's getting to you in like a fraction of a second. I guess would you say, what percentage of the skill of being a good baseball player is deciding in that fraction of a second where the ball's going to end up?
Well, I always say you've got a cylindrical bat in your hand, and you got a spherical ball coming at you at a high rate of speed. My psychiatrist told me this after I retired, and I never thought of it that way either. It's physics. Ball's coming in, and he said, "You're a visual person." You know, when I walk down the street, Manhattan, I never look at the architecture. I look at the architecture. I bought a baseball mitt from a guy in the street. It was sitting there Indian style, had all this pottery. And I'm walking by talking to the girl I was with at the time, and out of the corner of my eye, I saw this beautiful baseball mitt with a ball in it. It was like for a thing on the coffee table, out of the corner of my eye. So he said, "You're very visual. You were trained to track a ball coming in at a high rate of speed." But there are telltale signs. Believe me, when you're red hot, it is very much in slow motion. It is a very methodical decision that you make. The ball has giveaway. Has tendencies. Its slider has a little red circle in it. Curveball spins like a moon in the orbit. The split finger you couldn't read. That's what made it such a tough pitch to hit. So you see your focus is out of the hand. You don't look at the windup. But your focus is point of release. So you got to get that ball out of that hand as fast as possible. Read the pitch and anticipate what it's going to do. And you have an idea. It gets easier. Lou Brock told me the longer you're in the big leagues, you face the same pitchers. And you get just note and mark. And we didn't have computers in those days. In the back of your head, how they pitch you.
Well, but it's interesting. So Lou Brock told you this, but also I believe in the book you mentioned Dick Selma tells you this. Like for every pitcher, have a plan. And you mentioned almost like you mentioned to Ted Williams. It's almost like it's sort of like this realization you have. Like previously, you just kind of assumed a fastball would be coming, and then you would adjust accordingly.
Right.
But you have to really analyze for every pitcher. How have they pitched to you before? How have they pitched to other players? And you kind of have to have a plan per pitcher.
Right.
So it's not just kind of analyze. It's not just taking a random person and then trying to figure out what ball they're throwing. You also have to understand the pitcher, and this is what you also talk about in pure baseball. Right,
and that comes with experience. When you're a young kid, you just see the ball and hit it. You're 18, 19 years old, making your way through. When you get to the AAA level, like I said, I started playing with ex-major leaguers, and they must have seen in me something special, because Dick Selma came up to me and said, was the first guy to say, "Hey, the pitchers are trying to get you out. Are you paying? What are you doing up there?" I go, "I'm just looking for the ball and it's fastball and hitting it." And he goes, "Well, they got a plan. Start paying attention to how they're pitching you." And that was the first guy I did. Larry Dierker did it in the big leagues. The great Larry Dierker. When I played with Larry in 76, 77, and Jim Cott, I played with.
So again, this there's Pete Rose with the math. There's Dick Selma and Lou Brock with having a plan, which kind of separates, the way you just described it, separates the major leaguers from the minor leaguers. Like you have to have that plan. And I'm just trying to think of all these components of what transformed you from a talented, obsessed kid to one of the best players of all time. And one other event that you talk about in the book that intrigued me. At one point, you were having a slump with the Cardinals. They moved you down back to the minor leagues.
Right.
Did you cry?
Oh, yeah, I did. That was a very low point for me. That was my first full season. I got called up in 74 when Torrey sprained his thumb, and I did well the last 5 weeks of the season. Joe came back, and I had spot play. They traded him in the offseason to the Mets here, and I was the heir apparent, and I started. First year I broke camp, and I had a terrible April. I got benched. The team got off to a bad start, and I was basically overwhelmed. I wasn't emotionally ready. I mean, it's kind of daunting when you be obsessed with baseball and you collect baseball cards like I did, and you watch baseball on TV, and I'm 20 years old, and all of a sudden I look up and I get in the box, and there's Tom Seaver, there's Steve Carlton, there's Don Sutton, and I wasn't ready for it. I was overwhelmed.
You were scared?
I wasn't scared. Let's just say I was timid, and I didn't have the confidence, and I just wasn't emotionally ready. And I got sent down, and yeah, I cried when I went home, and I drove down to Tulsa, and it's a great picture in a book of Hector Cruz and myself, my first day back in Tulsa. I felt humiliated. I felt like I failed. I didn't want to come out of the clubhouse and show my face. We had great fans in Tulsa. We always had around 4,000 or 5,000 people every game.
Did you feel your career was over?
At that point, I was shaken, but I wasn't going to quit. And I went down to the minor leagues, back down to Tulsa after I led the league in hitting the year before at 352, and I hit 330. And I killed it, and they called me back up in October.
Maybe that was the way of getting you psychologically ready.
They had to get me back down.
Put you through this hell to see if you could rise back up.
If they'd have kept me up, I would have been destroyed. I was not going to come out of this. Looking back at it now, I was not going to. I needed to go back down for more seasoning.
Which actually really relates to the title of this book. So the title of this book is "I'm Keith Hernandez," and the reason, or part of the reason that's the title, is because that's a line from Seinfeld where you're trying to get up enough courage to kiss Elaine, and you're like, "I'm Keith Hernandez,"
right.
But this is related to all of these stories, really, which is, you even mentioned in the book, you suffered from low self-esteem.
Mm-hmm.
And how could that be? Like, you're the best player in high school, one of the best players in the minor leagues, then, you're cruising up to the major leagues. What did it mean for you to have low self-esteem?
Well, I think...
And maybe this was a way you pushed yourself.
I think everybody has self-doubt.
Some people don't.
When I won the MVP and I became a different person. I was married, had a child, and when I won the MVP in '79 in the batting title, I just became a different person, and that marriage was doomed.
But you became a different person. But even meeting Ted Williams, you were, as you say, sheepish.
Well, it's Ted Williams. And I'm a 25-year-old kid.
But you were the best player in baseball.
That year I was, but I had to do it again. That's another thing there that I went into the 1980 season. I had a bad 75. I got sent down. Got called back up. Did good in September. 76. I had a terrible first half. They benched me. We got out. We're Phillies run away with it. We're in 5th place. They play me every day a second half. I hit 333 second half of the season. I have a great second half, playing every day. 77, I have a breakout year. Hit 291, 15 home runs, drive in 91 runs. And then at 78, I have a good first half, and I completely fall apart in 78 in the second half. I hit like 220 in the second half. I drive in like 18 runs. Terrible. Then I have the MVP. So then I go into 80, and the press is saying, well, which is the real Keith Hernandez? And I felt it. I had to put 2 seasons back to back. And I'd always had bad Aprils. And that April was looming over me like a scarlet letter. And I went into that season tense and nervous. And I'll be darned if I didn't. The first series, it was there. And then when the month was over, and the book ends at May 1st, because that's how important April was. I had my first great April.
Why do you think you pushed yourself to that great April? Is it because you had this obsession with, I've got to put together 2 seasons?
Well, I'm coming off a great year, and I was confident that this was me. How can I not? But still, I had to prove it. It's always, Lou Brock played with a love for the game and embraced the challenges. I played out of fear of failure. And it's much easier to play when you embrace it and embrace the game and the challenges than to go up there and say, I would always be better when I was backed against the wall. I felt like my dad would always say, he taught us to be good 2-strike hitters, taught us the strike zone. He says, when you've got 2 strikes on you, you're like, this was his term too, you're like a wounded cat backed up into a corner surrounded by wild animals that want to kill you. That's how you got to hit with 2 strikes.
But some people will cave them in, that fear. Like, how did it make you step? What makes you the person who steps up as opposed to the person who caves in from the fear? Because
who's going to go hit for me? I have to do it. I mean, I had 2 big clutch hits in both World Series, and those at bats were so pressure packed. I mean, in '82 we're losing to the 7th game to Milwaukee. Gene Tennis, the veteran right-hand hitter, catcher for the world champion Oakland A's, who was our backup catcher, he pinch hits. They walk him, and not intentionally, but they pitch around on the pitch to me, a left-hander. And we're down a couple runs. And I remember in the on-deck circle, I said, they're pitching around him. They're going to pitch to me. It's going to be on me. I went, holy cow. So what are you going to do? You're going to go run and hide? You got to get up there. So I just kind of walked up to the plate. My dad always said in a tough situation, he goes, take a deep breath, count to 10, take another deep breath, get in the box and go to work.
So that's a way of being very present in the moment without thinking of all the the situation around you?
Those were two very stressful at-bats for me, and I succeeded on both of them. Very clutch hits. In '86, obviously against the Red Sox in Game 7, I got a similar situation. They pitched around Tim Tuffle, left-hander. Hurst, I couldn't believe it. I go, where are they're crazy. When I was established, and I said, they crazy? And I remember my brother was in the stands, and I looked up when Tuffle walked, and I was on one knee, and I looked up to my brother in the box seats behind home plate. My brother is very prominent in the book. My greatest fan, my greatest booster, no jealousy. It's just a very special relationship. And he was sitting around 15 rows back at home plate, and he just stood up and gave me the pump fist. And that kind of took the pressure off of me, and I got in the box and got a base hit.
That's great. Well, I want to wrap this up. I know you're pinched for time.
I can stay here all day. This has been a great interview.
Yeah, but I do have another question, but I just want to first say this book, a memoir. I'm Keith Hernandez, is a great sports memoir, and there's so many interesting things about how to be a peak performer. I think most importantly is all the different advice you got from mentors, like, could be applied to every situation, and we've only touched upon a few of those things. But I really like the Pete Rose approach. I really like the have a plan. One question I have, which is a little outside the book. 1986, you helped the Mets win the World Series, obviously. 1987, you're the team captain, and then by 1989, they're trading you. Like, obviously, you were really loyal to the Mets. What's the role of the team's loyalty to the player? I feel like that doesn't really happen anymore.
Well, it's a business. Players are traded. The first trade always hurts the worst because I came up with the Cardinals. You feel a part of the family, and you feel rejected. I mean, they got someone else that's going to take your spot. They feel it's better.
Yeah, but you could trade it from the Cardinals for like two non-players.
Yeah,
basically.
but there was a lot going on there. Whitey and I didn't get along, and that if there is a second book, we'll go further. We'll take it up from 80 to present, and that book will have a lot of interesting things that I'll have to deal with. You know, if we do that second book, which I'm hopeful. The second, they didn't trade me, they let me go. Carter and I broke my kneecap in a collision in '88. I was 36. I had 13 years. I was never on the disabled list. And I collided with a guy that was a second baseman for the Dodgers, Dave Anderson. I'm 203 pounds. We collided on a double play. He comes to tag me, and he's 160 pounds. I knocked him into the next county, but our knees knocked, and he broke my kneecap. And he cut it like a diamond cut horizontally across my kneecap, and I was out 8 weeks. And I came back in the heat of August, and I didn't play well. You can't. You're not 21 years old. You come back from injuries better in your 20s than you do in your my mid to late 30s. So Frank Cashin made the right assessment. I was finished. I thought I could still play. I wound up going to Cleveland. I signed to Cleveland as a free agent for a 2-year deal. And I went to camp. I realized within around a week that I had lost some skills. I certainly had lost 2 steps because of the knee. And things that I took for granted my whole career, all of a sudden I'm taking a lead off a base, and I'm afraid I can't score on a base hit. And all that trepidation come in, things that I just forever never even thought twice about, and my skills are diminishing. And I was embarrassed in Cleveland uniform by the way I played. And I knew I was finished. So that's a hard pill to swallow.
Yeah, and then you left the game, and it feels like you mentioned you didn't even watch a baseball game for years afterwards. Were you just burnt out? And
well, my career didn't have a Ted Williams, Derek Jeter ending to my career. You know, I had a shot at the Hall of Fame. If I had played a couple more years, I would have had over 2,500 hits. I would have had close to maybe 1,400 RBI if I played 2 more full seasons. But the body just finally gave out. And the athlete is always the last one to realize that it's over, and it's just it's something you've done your whole life. When I was retired, to think about it, I was 37 years old. I got a whole second half of my life ahead of me, and what am I going to do? I didn't know what I wanted to do. I saved my money, thank God. I put my money away in deferred compensation, right when I was 20 years old, and I had that program going on. So I knew I was going to have a steady income and a very good one. But still, what am I going to do? Am I just going to sit and twiddle my thumbs the rest of my life for the next 35 years? It's daunting.
And then, you describe how Elaine from the restaurant Elaine's sort of pushed you back into the game. But as a broadcaster, you've won 2 Emmys now as a professional sports broadcaster. You've written 4 books. This is the latest. I'm Keith Hernandez. Great book. I hope you write a 5th detailing 1980 and onwards. And actually, even your years as a broadcaster, I would love to read about. But so many lessons, and thanks so much for coming on the podcast, Keith. It's such a pleasure to me, and also I was a huge fan of your appearances on Seinfeld. We didn't even get much of a chance to talk about that, but just last question, was that fun?
It was terrifying. It was a whole week of rehearsal, and I had never acted. I was a year and a half retired. I had no aspirations to be an actor. Jerry's a Met fan from Brooklyn. I was his favorite player. He conceived this episode, and that's how it happened. And I just on a lark said, okay, I'll go and try it. And I got the script, and I went, holy cow, I'm a guest star. I got all these lines. But I got through it. And the process that was so interesting for me, I just was like, I got to get through this, because I realized I leave in a week, they go on to the next episode, and I better not screw up. But on Monday till Saturday, when we had the final shoot, watching the creative process, there was 3 other writers. There's Larry David, there's Jerry, and the principal actors were all contributing around the table. Well, let's try this. How about this? And Larry David was very, okay, let's get, and Larry David would have the final say, yes or no. So watching how they worked with the script to make it better as the week progressed, that was just absolutely an experience of a lifetime.
Well, that's great, Keith. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast.
Tell you, I've really enjoyed this. I wish we can stay longer.
Well, come back anytime, and we'll definitely have you back for the next book as well.
Okay, great. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Keith.
I created this idea called Generation W. It's all about educating, inspiring, connecting women, and it's about building community at the same time. It's not like women are on some outpost somewhere, right? Just like no ethnic people are on some outpost there, people of color, right? We're all together. So if we learn how to appreciate each other, we elevate one and we elevate us all. And so for the first year, that's where we started. And we had 700 people show up. They had no idea what they were showing up to, but they loved it. And they said, we want more.